Sheets hits it in the air to right center field. Freeland going back at the wall. It's gone! Three-run home run. Ellie Sheets on the road in Milwaukee. With 2 down in the ninth, it's a 3-run home run to put the Padres on top. He struck him out. The Padres win. Mason Miller coming in to close the door on the Brewers.
Hello and welcome to Padres Playback. He's Bill, I'm Bob. We're here to give you everything Padres that's happened in the past 2 weeks. Coming off the heels of a big win in Milwaukee, Gavin Sheets, 3-run home run to take the lead. Mason Miller locks it down, records his 13th save of the season. And over here, we're feeling pretty good, I think, right, Bill? We're feeling pretty good about that win.
Yeah. Did you know Gavin Sheets' favorite time to hit a home run is always in the ninth inning, and preferably with 2 runners on base? While we're either tied or
Probably with
behind by
2
1 or
runs.
2 runs. Yeah. Insane. I don't know what we just watched. That team was offense was lifeless for 8 innings, and then all of a sudden, with their backs against the wall, the cardiac Padres steals another win. Like what's happening right now?
So we got a lot to get into. We got a lot of ground to cover since we've last spoken. May, we've gotten off to a little bit of a shaky start. After today's win, the Padres find themselves at 6-6 in May, and we want to sort of talk about how we got here and what happened over the past 2 weeks of baseball. And I think the biggest news to start off with is, Cronenworth goes to the IL and Song gets called up. And I want to hear from you first, Bill, what you sort of thought, with Song's arrival, his debut, what we could expect, and, what you thought of his play.
Yeah, let's talk about Jake a little bit. The concussion was kind of a surprise for me. It was then I learned that concussion symptoms can set in several days later, which kind of watching some of the commentaries that's going around threads and other social media platform, it makes sense, right? Because both of the series after Anaheim, when he got hit in the face, they went to Colorado, and then they went to Mexico City, right? So concussion symptoms. Am I woozy because I'm in elevation? Who knows, right? So that was a surprise for me, but I think that little stint was much needed, right? Because Jake was just struggling and in the worst kind of way, right? Going back to Song, I like what we saw from him. You know, I think ultimately, what we could touch more on that later, but ultimately, I think he's probably going to be the odd man out when Jake comes off the IL. Just because I feel like Cassie's saved his job over the last couple of games here, right? But Song, I liked what I saw from him. He looked good defensively. Some of the at bats were pretty solid. But the bar's pretty low for second base, right?
Yeah. So I think, touching on what happened with Jake, it is something that we've been talking about a lot as I think a collective fan base is sort of like, is Jake the guy who signed that big contract after he came up? And I think collectively we've all sort of agreed probably not. I I think you know this. I'm a big Jake Cronenworth defender. I think he plays one of the best second gloves across the National League. But when you have a guy who's hitting a buck 38, like a buck 45, can't really get on base, isn't seeing a lot of pitches, and just sort of is kind of an automatic zero in a lineup that really is like anemic right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
It's either feast or famine, and you have a guy who just can't even bunt a guy over. You have to at least see what you have. And, prayers up, T's and P's with Jake. I hope everything with his concussion is fine. But, there's a lot of people sort of looking around being like, who can provide that spark offensively? And I think we saw it a little bit from Song in that debut he had in San Francisco. I mean, the hit he got off of Logan Webb that ended
it was
up
almost gone.
scoring 2
It was
guys. It
almost
was like
gone. Very close to being
yeah,
gone. Yeah,
it was almost gone.
yeah.
And opposite field at Oracle, where it's really hard to go
Mm-hmm.
oppo, because you
Yeah,
got the Marine layer, it's a big outfield, and Logan Webb doesn't leave a lot of stuff up in the zone, and he went down and got it.
yeah,
And then he, like, later in the game, had a really good at bat, worked a walk, stole a base, and those are the things we used to see Jake do.
yeah.
And so, I think a lot of people, were worried with him, sort of the same worry you saw floating around with Okamoto and Murakami, like how will he handle velocity? And not that, Logan Webb's going to burn like 100 miles an
Hmm.
hour right past you, but he throws hard. He throws a hard sinker at like 95 miles an hour, and being able to go down and get it and hit it the other way was, I think, a very good sign for, even if this isn't his final, up and down, like we have something there
Yeah.
that we can go to if Jake gets hurt, and we have it because going into the year, everybody was like, we're not really carrying another like backup like middle infielder, and we've seen Tatis play over there, and we've seen Song, since he's come up, play a pretty good second base and a pretty good shortstop. So
Yep.
I'm very pleased, even though his best game has been his debut. I think that we have pretty high expectations for what he could bring to this offense once he does get his feet wet and get established at the big league level.
Absolutely. And honestly, the Jake Cronenworth deal, by the time the CBA is hammered out, it's gonna look like not a lot of money. 12 million a
Pennies.
year. I think even in the
Yeah.
long run, if he ends up being the super utility guy, like I could live with $12 million a year for a super utility guy who can play every position in the infield, right? And a lefty bat off the bench. So I think I'm a big fan of Jake. People who follow me on Threads who've I've talked Padres with over the past couple of years know I'm a big Jake Cronenworth defender, right? But it's hard to
Yeah.
defend just because he's in his way right now, right? Like you could tell that
Yeah.
his offensive struggles has kind of spilled to his decision making on the field as well, right? So but yeah, I mean, I think the contract is fine. I think like I said, especially after this new CBA is hammered out, it's gonna look like pennies for a bench guy, right? So I think we'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Absolutely.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Lucas Giolito hasn't looked great in his rehab starts so far, right? Well, not really rehab. Let's call these ramp up starts because he didn't really have a spring
Sure.
training. But you worried about him, Bob?
I think there's definitely something to be worried about with Lucas Giolito. I don't think it's like, red flags everywhere. I think the biggest things you see, I went back and watched Giolito's first start with the Chihuahuas. And, the biggest thing that jumped off the page at me is just the guy who's looking to find his release point with his fastball and who is inconsistent with throwing his breaking balls. And that's just stuff that guys go through in spring training.
Yeah,
And he didn't have a spring training. And usually Giolito's, again, he's not a fireballer, but he like sits around 94 to 95, and he was throwing like 92 and 93.
yeah,
And me and you talked about it. It was 2 days ago that he had his best start. He went 6 innings with 3 hits, only 3 strikeouts, 1 earned run. But that's like, a pretty good start for somebody who's only throwing their fifth game after not throwing since last year. So I think, and let's like talk about the expectations with Giolito. I don't think it's fair to expect him to come in and do what Nick Pivetta did last year,
yeah,
to go, 180 innings and have a 2.9 ERA with close to 190 strikeouts. That's not the type of guy he is. But what he can do is sort of stabilize the back part of that bullpen, because not bullpen, pitching rotation, because like Michael King, Randy Vasquez, dogs. Like when we get Nick Pivetta back, he's going to be a dog.
yeah,
Griffin Canning has looked fantastic, and I feel pretty good that Giolito is like going to come in and throw quality innings. He's not going to set the world on fire, but he's going to be exactly what we need. So I'm not particularly worried. I'm just chalking it up to ramp up, fatigue, a little rust, and then once he sort of gets into the big league clubhouse and working with Niebla more closely, he'll be fine.
yeah.
He'll be like totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the bar's low, right? Just got to be better than Marquez, got to be better than Waldron, got to be better than Bueller, right? It's a pretty low bar, right? I don't think Lucas Giolito is necessarily like a Paul Skeens type or a frontline starter, if you will, right?
No,
He's a guy
not at all.
that you maybe give the ball to in a game 4 of a playoff series, maybe, right, with a very short leash.
Maybe.
So it's just got to be better than those 3 that we mentioned, right? So that's it, and whether or not Pavetta comes back this year or not, I still think, on top of AJ shopping list at this deadline has to be another frontline starter, right? We've talked about this in the past. We talk about it in the group chat. We talk about it on Threads. We've talked about it in the last episode. We need another frontline starter, period, right? So I'm not concerned about Giolito. This is his spring training. I don't think 192 innings obviously is possible at this point because he's basically starting, a month and a half behind the cue ball. But he'll be fine. I think he'll be fine. But again, the bar's low. Just be better than Herman, be better than Walker, and definitely be better than Waldron, right? So he'll be fine. But let's talk Ethan Salas. We got a prospect who's
Dude,
kind of rebuilding his value right now, huh?
I think Ethan Salas, when he first came up, we heard this guy could be, a 70 plus defensive catcher who could hit with power and for average. And, I think a lot of people forget just how young Ethan Salas is. When he was playing his first stint of like high A ball, he was
Yeah,
17. And like he had a really tough time adjusting, and then he had a couple back injuries, and he fell off the top 100 prospects list, and everybody was sort of like, oh, I don't know if this guy's going to pan out.
yeah,
But he's homered now at the time of recording 6 times in his past like 10 games,
yeah,
and is hitting over 300, close to a 1 dot in terms of OPS. And his at bats, like when I went and watched the Giolito start with the Chihuahuas, I was paying attention to a lot of his at bats, and they look like big league at bats. And I think Ethan Salas is sort of forcing his way back into the conversation of like the Padres really have something with this guy. And, again, he's only 19 years old and he's tearing up double A as the youngest player in the Texas League, the
yeah,
youngest player. And I'm over the moon about what he could provide, especially looking down the line, when roster expansions opens up and sort of the future offensively and the slug that this team has been missing, to be completely honest.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
Go ahead.
It's nice to see him kind of recoup some of that value that he's lost the past like year or so with the injuries and the back injuries and whatnot. So it's good to kind of see him, you know, have a good year offensively. Because we know defensively, that's his calling card, right? Like he was very highly touted. The bat coming around at such an early age, especially coming off of a year filled with injuries and struggles, it's definitely a welcome sight, right? But as far as like, September call up or, or whatnot, the only thing that I'm kind of seeing right now is AJ's got another blue chip that he can wave around at the deadline to go get us an ace. So I'm thinking a little bit further ahead. Um, Obviously, the conversation always has been, does AJ give up too many of our prospects? But you look at Ethan Salas and his age, he doesn't quite fit this timeline of this ball club, right? If we're in a win down mode, um, I'm moving Salas for the right pitcher.
Mhm. And I think every team you sort of look around the league, they could use an offensive catcher who's great defensively. And, we sort of have a great defensive catcher who's, above average, average offensively, and a really good offensive catcher with Campy, who his defense has really come around. And, you look at especially how he's adjusted to this big league level that like is there really a spot where Ethan Salas fits in right now in a win now window? Probably not.
Yeah.
So I do think he is sort of the number one person that if I'm AJ Preller, I'm trying to get people like I'm calling in about trying to move him to get, you know, a big arm who can really like chew through innings and carve up a lineup. And I it makes a lot of sense that he's going to get moved. I think prospects are all really shiny, but like if you look over at like what a lot of teams do with these top prospects, they hold them and then they don't really pan out exactly the way they're supposed to. And then they look back and they're like, I could have gotten more value for him while he was tearing it up in double A and helped my club right now. So I like that AJ is willing to just like ship off guys for right now.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing with like prospects or suspect. Like I would rather have proven MLB talent in a win now window. For me, that's me.
Absolutely. I think we're both kind of with AJ on this, right? F them prospects, right? F them prospects.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and try to win, right? Let's move along. Let's recap the previous couple of series, right? So as of recording of our last episode, if you recall, if you guys want to go back, I was gassing up Herman Marquez as my surprise of the season. And then after we recorded, we turned on the game and we're like, oh, he gave up 7 runs. Now on the IL. So talk to me about the last couple of series. What did you see? What were your thoughts? We did not play great baseball the last 3 series, right? With the Sox, the Giants, the Cardinals. Talk to me, Bob.
So I think the They all have different problems. If you look at the White Sox, the Cubs, and sort of that homestand that we had, we were just walking way too many guys, and the offense was not showing up and picking up guys. But it's really hard when you let a team score 8 runs and you go forward and they score 6 runs the next game. Like your offense just can't really pick up that slack. I mean, our run differential was a negative 25
Yeah.
and we walked 13 batters. That's not a successful recipe to win baseball games. I think if you go down to every level of baseball, people will tell you that walks equal runs. Like you, especially leadoff walks. You cannot let guys get free passes, and especially when they have power hitters, like we saw it with the White Sox. Like Murakami really hurt us, and that was something that me and you had talked about off camera about being like the matchups going into this with Marquez. Were worrisome. You know, he's a guy who throws like a breaking ball and doesn't really have a great fastball to bully you. Our pitching lineups didn't really match up particularly well. And I was disappointed. You know, I was gassing up the boys too. I think anybody who's a real fan, if your team goes on the type of run we went on in May, sees the White Sox, they're like, yeah, dude, that's no
Easy
problem. And
sweep.
that's no
Yeah.
disrespect to
Yeah.
yeah, that's no disrespect to Chicago. I'll be the first one to say I was not familiar with Chicago's game at all. I mean,
Yeah.
they shut me up the entire series. I was like, wow, these guys are a lot better than I thought they were. And I think maybe some of our guys felt that too. You know, like these White Sox players, they were just like, they're especially their pitching staff and guys that like had like a 5 ERA looked like Cy Young contenders because our offense just could not adjust to what they were throwing. And you can get into like whether it was arm angles or coming off of elevation. A lot of teams really struggle,
Yeah.
especially coming back from long road trips where they play in Colorado. We played in Colorado and then we played in Mexico City where like an infield fly turns into a home run.
Yeah.
And I think we saw some of that like rust maybe, or maybe our boys got a little bit too far in front of their own skis and they were like, yeah, this is an easy sweep, no problem.
Yeah.
So I look at the White Sox series and the biggest thing that jumps out to me is walks.
Yeah.
Like we just cannot walk that many guys.
Yeah. That series, we won the Sunday game to prevent a sweep against the White Sox in May. Who would have thought, right? So, touching a little bit on it, Griffin Canning had a really good debut with us. 5 innings, seven strikeouts. Gave up 1 run, factored in the decision, but I liked what I saw from Canning. I know we touched a little bit about Canning at the top, but what stood out to me the most about him was his changeup. His changeup is disgusting. And what did you think about Canning's first start?
My wife is a humongous Mets fan, and I got to see a lot of Griffin Canning last year for them, and he looked great. And when we signed him in January, I was like, when he comes back, he's going to be a really good pitcher, and he was exactly what you expected.
Yeah.
When he showed up, his slider is probably his best pitch, along with the changeup, and
Yeah.
his changeup it looks so good out of the hand, and then it just ducks right when you want it to. It falls off the table, and it made a lot of guys look silly. And I
Yeah.
think he had 7 Ks
Yep.
for his
7 Ks.
first like big league action back. 7 Ks through 5 innings. And I think with a lot of guys, you don't really know what you're going to get when they're coming back from like rehab starts, especially with a torn Achilles. We've seen it a lot that like guys really struggle sometimes coming
Yeah.
back from that. And he didn't look overwhelmed at all. He was just like, yeah, I shove.
Yeah.
And then like, I think it was his third or fourth inning, like right before he came out, he struck out the side, and I was like, that's exactly what we needed right now.
Yeah.
Like somebody who's just gonna show up and shove. And so like me and you talked about it, that like I'm excited to see Griffin Canning every time I see him on the schedule. Like probable pitchers like Griffin Canning, I feel like sort of almost like Randy Vasquez, like we're gonna be in line to win with him on the mound. We have a really good shot if the
Yeah.
offense just does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I think it's along those same lines of like when you see him on the schedule, it's kind of like a Michael King or Randy Vasquez. Like we have a pretty good chance at winning this next game, right? Let's switch to the next series. We went to San Francisco after the White Sox series. Game 1 of that series, a guy who sells burgers through 7 innings of 2 hits against us, right? And here we go
Yeah.
again, kind of touching back to the point where you said earlier, every White Sox starter looked like they were Cy Young candidates. To be fair, in the month of May, we've made a lot of pitchers look like Cy Young candidates, and the Burger Boy
Pretty
was
much
one of them.
everybody.
Yeah, the Burger Boy was one of them. We dropped that
Yeah.
first game 3-2, and then came back and won the next two. So, the Giants cures all our struggles, I guess, because we played them well so far, right? Especially, I think we're 3-3 against them. I believe we dropped the first series 1-2, so now we went 2-1 this last series. But the Giants are struggling, and I think it was encouraging to see us pull off the last two, especially after the first game after Burger Boy went 2 hit on us in 7 innings. What did you think about the Giant
Yeah.
series? What stood out to you?
I think the Giants series was, I was worried about the offense for pretty much the whole series, but it was sort of the thing we've been talking about the whole episode is like we just sort of find big innings and find crooked numbers or even clutch hits.
Yeah,
Like I think Trevor McDonald, I did not. Again, it's sort of the same thing. He was like he's a young guy. He throws a nasty sinker and a slider, and it's just maybe we just can't hit those guys,
yeah,
And maybe like looking at the schedule, if we see a couple guys who throw that, it's like we're not going to be able to really
yeah,
like get anything going right now. We're gonna have to rely on the bullpen, and our pitchers showed up and they did work, and it looked really good. They shoved,
yeah.
and I think the offense picked up where they needed to pick up. I think the biggest story we talked about earlier was Song's debut,
Yep.
and I thought he looked great, and I think he looked very comfortable in his first like true big league action. I know he got subbed in as a pinch runner in Mexico City, but his first big league at bats, he looked really
It was
good.
game 2 of the series.
And
Yeah.
we talked about it,
Yeah.
yeah, game two, and I think that like coming back and it's Logan Webb, somebody we play really well, but sort of that big inning that we put up on him in the fourth, like that for me, I was like, okay, like May might not be as bad as we think it's going to be, and April wasn't a fluke. Like
Yeah.
this team is dangerous. This team is talented, and you saw a lot of guys, draw really long at bats and work into a hitter's count or work the count full and get what they were looking for. And so I think, and yes, the Giants are struggling. It's not like we beat the best team in baseball.
Yeah.
But you have to win who's in front of you. You have to play who's in front of you. And, showing up after, a 2-4 homestand after you dominated the month of April, I was really happy with how the boys sort of like bounced back, especially after a tough game one.
Yeah.
And then you get into game three, and I think it was all Padres all the way pretty much. And then Gavin Sheets hits one into McCovey
Yeah.
Cove right when we need one,
Yeah.
and the game's over. I think what's going on with the team in terms of like offense is just like it's a slump.
Yeah.
It's just like a team wide slump. And if you look at the numbers, you would be like, wow, Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, Xander Bogaerts, Gavin Sheets, they're all on pace to have their worst season in the big leagues ever.
Yeah.
None of that is going to happen. Like it's not impossible. It's just so improbable for the entire lineup to have their worst year ever.
Yeah.
And so I think like, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry.
I think the Giants series just showed me that there is something to be hopeful for with this offense figuring it out, because we were able to get to Logan Webb and then put up enough runs to get the job done on the road in a place that's tough to hit.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And talking about the series finale there, and I'll touch a little bit about the offensive struggle too. Waldron made us think he could be a big league pitcher. Proved us very wrong in the first game of this Milwaukee set, right? We'll talk more about Waldron later, but talking about the Padres struggle, Ramon Laureano, as of this recording, is 2 for 28 in the month of May. So he is struggling in some kind of bad way. Nando's not doing super well, obviously. But I will say that the Nando struggles are overblown, right? I don't think he's playing as bad as people think he is. He's still getting hits, he's still affecting the game with his speed and his defense and all that stuff. So I don't think he's really struggling as bad. But Manny, Jackson, the core four, hasn't really done much, right? Outside of Bogaerts. I personally think the offense will be fine. It's going to take some time, but very encouraging to see us kind of pull out some dubs despite the struggles from our big three, if you will. Let's move on to the Cardinals. That was an ugly series, huh, Bob?
That was probably the toughest baseball we've watched all year. and that was, factoring in the worst like opening homestand I've seen in a very long time. I think, you know, it's sort of the same thing we've been touching on the entire episode. It's just like too many missed opportunities from the Padres in those first two games.
Yeah.
And those missed opportunities get amplified, when you're playing a team again, like the Cardinals have been playing really good baseball, and a lot of people had them as sort of like bottom dwellers heading into the year. Um, these are teams you should beat.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make a deep playoff run, you should beat the Cardinals. You should win the series. And winning a 4-game series is tough. A lot of teams, even the best teams, will end up splitting a series. But for me, I think, the offense, we had a new record low in terms of hits over a
Yeah.
4-game series with only 14. And that record had stood since 1985.
Yeah.
And I think it's just bad at bats, chasing stuff that's in the other batter's box, not having good situational baseball, at least in those first two games.
Yeah.
And, we're playing pitchers like we should beat. When I was like, it was Liberatore, Dustin May in game 3, and like, those guys have like 5 ERAs and they held us to like 2 hits a piece through like quality starts.
Yeah.
So,
And it's kind of going back to
go
to
ahead.
the fact that our offense is just making everybody look like a Cy Young winner, right? If you follow
Yeah,
me on Threads, you see me joke about it. That's not Cy Young on the mound. That's just the Padres offense. That's at the plate, right? Um,
yeah,
and I want to give the Cardinals credit though. Like if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm excited about the direction this team is. Like this team is clearly
absolutely.
probably the youngest ball club in baseball right now. They're clearly ahead
Yeah,
of schedule. Clearly ahead of schedule. Very impressive. Jordan Walker was very impressive. Um, you know, uh, I think that team's gonna look really, really good. But I kind of want to touch on that Tatis error real quick.
yeah. Speak on
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I saw kind of some wild reactions on Threads. And I'm gonna make it perfectly clear right now, Padres fans, faithfuls, we don't boo our own guys. We just don't. It's not San Diego coded. It's not what we do. That's our guy. He's been our guy for a long time. Is he the same player he was pre-injury and the PED suspension? Clearly not, right? But there are pieces there that reminds you of just how good he is, why he's so electric, why he's a platinum glove winner. Outside of the home runs not being there, we just don't boo our own guys. It's just not what we do, right? Um,
No,
and that was a direct effort of result, if you will, of a competitor who wanted to make a play and just missed the ball.
that's
Um,
all it is.
it wasn't a lack of effort. If anything, it was an effort driven error, right? Because he was charging the ball. He wanted to prevent the second runner from coming home. But unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's a long baseball season. I'm willing to bet, you watch Nando play 162 games, you'll see him do that maybe once, right? He's that good.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like, he's that good. Like, I cannot think of a situation, especially since Tatis has moved to the outfield, where he's had a play that's resulted in that. Like, I seriously, like, I
Yeah.
can't. I think pretty much ever since he's moved to the outfield, he's been the best right fielder in baseball. And even with that error, he's the best defensive
Yeah.
right fielder in baseball.
The
And
the platinum
the
glove
thing
speaks for
is,
itself, right? Like,
it
yeah,
speaks for itself,
yeah,
dude. I mean, like, his defense is the most valuable aspect of his game. And I mean, everybody makes errors. Manny
yeah,
Machado, who's one of the best third basemen of all time, he's made errors. It's
yeah,
just like baseball is just baseball.
yeah,
And I do agree with you that people blew it way out of
yeah,
proportion. And I think the narrative that, like, you know, the Padres don't hustle just couldn't be further from the truth.
yeah,
Like, these are guys who show up every day. Manny Machado doesn't miss a game. Fernando Tatis Jr. played the most games of his career last year
yeah,
and is like doing everything the team needs of him. And he's the face of the franchise. Like, he's the guy. And they're like, yeah, go play second. And he's like, okay.
yeah,
He was the face of the franchise at shortstop. They're like, go play outfield. He was like, okay, whatever the team needs. And I think just the booing really sat with me extreme. Like, it left a poor taste in my mouth. And like, the people who are doing that, like, they're not us.
yeah,
They're not people who keep the faith. And I said it to you, like, you know on Threads, like, I take that extremely seriously. Like, I like these are my guys. Like
Yeah.
I love everybody on
Yeah.
our team. I want all of the people on our team to succeed, and like keeping the faith is that. It's like, yeah, okay, one bad play, but like you said, there's 162 games. He will make hundreds of plays that will make you forget about that in an instant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Let's skip it a little bit, because that Cardinal series is a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde, right? It's
yeah,
really bad baseball, and then the Cardiac Padres. Here we go again, right? Let's talk
yeah.
about the finale. Let's skip right to it, right? Like Nick Castellanos, like talk about saving your job. Talk to me about Nicky Two Beers here.
Dude. So Nikki Two Beers, somebody who, when you have the guy with the longest homerless streak on the mound, and Riley O'Brien, that I probably wanted to see the least up to bat.
Yeah.
I mean, he has just not had very many competitive at bats, and you saw sort of what we've seen from him early in that at bat, chasing a sweeper away and then being late on a fastball high. But then he sort of like locked in
Yeah.
and he really battled. And I mean, it was a 9 pitch at bat against one of the best closers in the National League right now. Like Riley O'Brien is not somebody to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
And then he hits that foul ball, breaks his bat, and he goes over to the dugout and he gets Fernando's bat. And I think it's the very next pitch he sees, he cranks it over the wall. I
Yeah.
lost my shit.
Yeah.
I was over
Same.
at my mother-in-law's house, and I lost my shit.
Yeah.
Um, and every home run he's hit has been a 2-run game tying
Yeah.
homer. It's sort of the same thing we talked about with Gavin. It's like these big guys who have made big league plays, they just sort of have this like resolve to tap into in these moments where he's like, yeah, I'm going to crank this. And he knew it off the bat. And I think for an offense that's been struggling the way ours has, that served as like a big spark plug to get things going. And that's why you watch the whole game. And that's why you keep the faith, because like it could be anybody. It could be the last guy off the bench who will go
Yeah.
and hit a big home run to tie up the game and put us in position to win. And I completely agree with you. I think Nick Castellanos saved his job
Yeah.
with that big home run, because the Padres were like, we need to see something from you. I don't know if they definitely weren't saying that. And everything I've seen from like the vibe in the clubhouses, all the guys are sort of like, very together, and like especially through this slump, like relying on each other. But like I think a lot of the fans were like, where's Nick Castellanos? What is he doing for me?
Yeah.
And I think if this was like a video game, like he was down and his teammate came over and like revived him real quick,
Yeah.
and like now he has a full health bar again, and like probably bought him another month on the team.
Yeah, he was very well on his way of becoming the next like Jason Hayward, Yuli Gurriel, right? We talked about that a little bit, I believe, in the previous episode, right? But touching on the Castellanos clutch home run, I do want to kind of, and the whole Tatis bat story thing, I do want to kind of give Nick his flowers a little bit, because he stood up for Nando in that locker room, right? A reporter asked
Absolutely.
a really dumb question, like, you have more home runs than Nando, whatever, and Nick just simply said, "That's rude." And
True.
shout out to Nick, team guy, team
Absolutely.
answer, just a consummate professional with that answer, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about how that game ended, right? So Machado walked it off with the sac fly. The Padres have had a
Yep.
lot of walk off this season. That was probably the most
Yeah, dude,
anticlimactic
yeah.
walk off of all time, right? We had the Xander Bogaerts grand slam against Colorado.
Yep.
The next night, oh, that was in extra innings. The next night, we had the Gavin Sheets 3-run home run walk off on the City Connect debut. A couple games later, we had that 6-run comeback capped up by the Jackson Merrill double that scored the winning runs. We've seen some pretty exciting walk off. Like
It's been fun.
all things considered, that Machado walk off was kind of a yawn, right? Like,
Like
yeah,
yeah,
walk off sac
absolutely.
fly, yeah,
I walk outside fly, and you do love to see it. Like I'm
yeah,
not taking anything away
yeah,
that is perfect situational hitting. That's exactly what we need from you, Manny. Please keep doing that. But this team sort of has a flair for the dramatic that
yeah,
we haven't really seen in Padres teams, at least in a while,
yeah,
like probably since 2022. And I'm all here for it. And I think the opposite side of the walk off thing is like you are in a position where you do have to walk it off. I think we would like to see a couple more convincing wins, but the Devil Magic Padres are fun. I think the game we watched tonight, I love there's nothing that beats a walk-off home run. I mean, it feels so good. Like if
Yeah,
I could bottle that and start my day with that feeling, I would be the best employee at my company every single day.
yeah,
Like just like that. Oh my God, it's so good. And I do think that the Manny walk-off probably is the one that is the least climatic. Now, I think moving forward for me, I would like to see less of those just so we can have a little bit more comfortable of a
yeah.
watch. But a win is a win is a win. I will take that every day of the week.
Yeah, I think if we've learned anything from the first month and a half of this Padres season, don't turn the game off. Don't leave early. You never know what's going to happen, right? So keep the faith. Let's touch a little bit about this current series. Waldron did not look good in his first start, right? We thought that Bradley being the starter and Waldron coming in relief, they're going to do the whole Chase Dollander thing that the Rockies are doing. We thought we found some success there, right, in the Giant series. Oh boy, were we wrong. Um,
Super.
yeah, I think this is probably the last time we see Waldron, right? So if you look at the schedule that's coming
Yeah.
up, the Padres actually hasn't announced a starter for Sunday. So I wonder who's going to start on Sunday. That's crazy. But talk to me a little bit about Matt Waldron, game one. What are your thoughts?
I think, you know, collectively, when we have Matt Waldron on the mound, we just hope he doesn't give up an insurmountable lead.
Yeah,
And more times than not, he ends up doing that. And again, this is nothing against him. Like, this just isn't working.
yeah,
I think he's been with our organization for a long time, and we've seen him have success. I mean, 2024, he pitched a lot of really meaningful innings, but there was still sort of that like bruised side of the apple where you're like, yeah, he gives up a lot of home runs and a lot of contact, but he's also a knuckleballer. And this year, that hasn't worked at all. In fact, in his last start, I think he threw it 3 times, and it was relying on his fastball and his sweeper, and guys are just barreling him, and you can sort of see in his starts him unravel. And I think the cataclysm, and if you were to bottle everything into like one moment, it was when a bunt gets laid down, there's 2 runners on, he turns to third, can't make the throw, turns around, tries to go to first, there's no play, and he just has to eat it, and there's bases loaded with one guy out and the heart of the lineup coming up, and you're like, dude, you're just like not doing anything for me right now. And
I,
this is a team that like we need guys who are going to go and put us in a position to win. And unfortunately, Waldron's just not doing that. He doesn't have velocity that can wow you. His breaking stuff is inconsistent, and his knuckleball just isn't working for him. He's not even throwing it. So I do think this is the last time we see Matt Waldron in a Padres uniform,
I,
and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and I think barring injuries, if you will, right? A little housekeeping note: the Padres have to add Lucas Giolito to the Major League roster by May 16th, right? Which is kind of within the time frame of him coming back this Sunday or this weekend in Seattle for the Padres. Also worth noting, Matt Waldron is out of minor league options. So if we DFA him, we want to send him to AAA. He's got to clear waivers. I don't think anybody's going to claim him. So I think he's probably going to be the one that goes. You could see the Padre kind of throw a curveball. Bradley does have minor league options available. They could set him down and move Waldron to the bullpen or move Buehler to the bullpen. But I think, obviously Waldron is probably going to be the odd man out. If I had to guess, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, but I would probably say Waldron probably gets DFA'd and he'll probably clear waivers and he'll probably return to El Paso. Let's move on. Let's talk about me going to 7 games in 10 days, huh?
Dude. And what a 7 games you went to, dude. Holy moly.
Yeah. Honestly, like it, if I had to like go back, like if I went back in time and told childhood Billy that like you would go to 7 games in 10 days, 6 home games in a row, I'd be like, you're freaking nuts, dude. You're out of your mind. Like, um, you know, as you guys know, most of you know who are friends with me on Threads, I live downtown, so it's a 20-minute walk for me after work, right? So a lot of times, for my job, I'll sit there, I'll call, and I'll be on game time. I'll be like, let me see if I can find a cheap ticket, like in the 200 section. It's kind of my favorite sections, right?
What's going on?
Just ended up finding tickets, and just kept going. And shout out to the City Connect hat that's sitting next to me. It's It's now 7-1, unfortunately, but it was 7-0. I wore that same hat to all the games. I actually bought the hat at the team store on that Friday game against Colorado with the Gavin walk off, along with the hoodie. And yeah, I saw Gavin's walk off. I went to the Mariners series where I thought my winning streak was going to end because the Mariners went up 6-0 pretty early, and
Yeah.
they came back, and I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad I didn't leave. That was the puffer vest fiasco. For those of you who recall,
Oh my god.
y- yeah, I thought the streak was gonna end, and then when we won that game, and I was sober. I didn't have a single beer at the ball game. I ran downtown all the way back to my apartment, high fiving every single Padres fan in my way. It was a scene, like it
Yeah.
was a party downtown. You know, when Dodgers fan make fun of us and say throw the parade, throw the damn parade. We came back from six. Who cares? You
Yeah.
know, you know.
Yeah.
So it was wild, and shout out to some of our friends because people asked me for my Venmo. They're like, you got to go to the series finale in Seattle against Seattle. A couple people sent me some money, and I ended up getting some pretty good tickets. I was 11 rows up from the first base side. It was pretty close. Saw up close why they call Cal Raleigh the Big Dumper. That that was the Walker
Yeah.
Bueller start, right? Yeah,
Yep.
just just insane. I like just I just feel super blessed to be able to live this close to the ballpark and just live in San Diego. I love this city. I love this team, and just being able to live this close and go to a ball game whenever I feel like it. It's fun, right? Now these aren't the Padres of my youth, where I could get a ticket for $10, and sit pretty close, right? I'm showing, it's a pretty penny, but as long as they keep winning, I'm in.
We'll keep showing up.
You know what I mean? So, um, I kind of want to talk about Anaheim real quick. So, have you been to Angel Stadium, Bob?
No,
Okay, yeah,
no. Angel Stadium is one that I always sort of just have missed,
yeah.
whether it's like when they're there or what's going on with my personal life. But it's been on my list. I've heard it's really nice.
Yeah, yeah. This is probably, gosh, my fifth ballpark. Dodger Stadium, Petco. Went to Yankee Stadium several years back. Went to Fenway. But Angel Stadium is a throwback. It reminds me a lot of like what Qualcomm used to be. You could park, people were tailgating. It's very '90s
Mhm.
coded. You just walk through,
Sure.
the concourse. You're like, this is like a very '90s coded ballpark. Um, it was it's a fun little ballpark. I would say, it's obviously older, but I would say, having been to a game there, it's my first one outside of Petco in a very long time. Fans don't realize how good we have it at Petco. Um,
Yeah.
just you go to Petco, like it's a whole fan experience, right? Like
Mhm.
on the scoreboards, the little side scoreboard, that separates the section, right? It's all ads at Angel Stadium, right? For the Padres, you have a little score bug. It tells you what the last pitch was. It tells you the horizontal break, the vertical break. Like it's truly an experience, right? Exit velocity after a hit. Angel Stadium was bought by a lot of ads. um, the
Yeah.
out of town scoreboard was just two jumble ads filled with just a scrolling like couple scores at a time. Whereas like if you go to Petco, the out of town
Mhm.
scoreboard, you can see the
Everything.
AL and then the NL will flash in, right? So um, you really truly don't really know how good you have it at Petco until you kind of like go to a different ballpark. But overall, I thought it was cool. Like it was not that far of a drive from San Diego. Didn't run into any traffic on the way down. I hear the coaster is a very like good option to go with as well if you don't feel like driving. So I would definitely go again. I joked a little bit about it being Petco North. Padres fans definitely showed up that weekend.
Yeah.
And it's the funny thing. I was thinking on my way back. I was like, 10 years ago, Padres fans probably wouldn't even go to Anaheim for the weekend for this, right? So it just kind of speaks to kind of like how far like this team has come. So yeah, 7 games in 10 days. You're about to go on a baseball adventure yourself, right? You're about to go to Seattle this weekend. Talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, so this will be my wife and I's second baseball trip of the year. We went to Fenway earlier in April, and I'm super excited to go to Seattle. And sort of, like it's been on my list for a while. It's sort of one of the final West Coast ballparks to tick off on my list. And I think I agree with you on a lot of what you said about Petco, that it is such a nice fan experience. And I've heard the same thing about T-Mobile. And obviously the ballpark's beautiful, and I'm gonna go check out like the Ichiro statue and everything. Um, and I think I'm gonna get to see some really good baseball. I think both teams are sort of at the same point offensively, so I don't really know what to expect, but I'm going to see a lot of really good pitching.
Yeah.
I mean, looking up and down, like who we're probably going to see in Seattle, we're probably going to see Randy. We're probably going to see Giolito, Griffin Canning, get to see them in person and sort of see like what's going on there. And then looking across the diamond, like Brian Wu went today, so it's probably going to be Emerson Hancock, Logan Gilbert, and get to see a lot of frontline starters go head to head in a place that's pretty hard to hit. And Julio Rodriguez and Fernando Tatis are sort of like mirrors of each other
Yeah.
in the same
They're
way.
good buds.
So
Yeah.
like getting to see they're good buds, getting to see them go at it will be fun. And I think, and this is something that I've thought for a while, like Mariners and Padres fans, like we're sort of the same in a lot of ways. Like I think we're both like, we're living in a really good time for the both of us, and it's been a tough existence for a long time. And
Yeah.
you touched on that earlier. Like I don't think, I can think back as recently as like 2018, like buying 2018, 2019, buying tickets at Petco, and by the sixth inning, you could sit basically behind the home
Very
dugout.
well. Yeah.
If you started in the upper deck and you worked all the way down, and this is the golden age right now of our franchise,
Yeah.
and I'm extremely excited to see the Vetter Cup
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that rivalry that's there. Because like every Mariners fan I talk to, I'm like, oh yeah, the Vetter Cup. They're like, oh yeah, what is that? And we're both like, yeah, dude, it's just like
Yeah.
ridiculous. But
Yeah. Yeah. Something
I'm
about
excited to go see some good
yeah.
football.
Something about Eddie Vedder being from Seattle, lived in San Diego for like a little bit, right? Whatever. Anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um.
just like, but the thing is, he's like a Cubs fan. It's
Yeah.
it's weird. Um, and you know, even going to like when I went to Fenway, every single person who I sat beside, they were like, "Your team has such a beautiful ballpark. I love going to San Diego." And I was like, "Yeah, it's like resort baseball.
Yeah.
It's like 75 and sunny. You can get tacos in the stands. Like, if you're a baseball nerd, like both of us are, talking about like IVB and like horizontal break, like they have all that stuff like very accessible,
Yeah.
and you can sort of like watch the game however you want to watch it at Petco,
Yep.
which is nice."
Yeah. Let's speaking of the golden age of, Padres baseball, let's talk about, ownership, Jose Feliciano, Kwanzaa Jones, as we all know that sale was finalized. Let's start with, talking about Peter. Peter obviously Peter Seidler, the late Peter Seidler, obviously ushered in the golden age of Padres baseball. So talk to me a little bit about Peter's impact to you.
I think you see it when you go on the road and when you go to Petco, like what you talk. There's no better place to be as a Padres fan than at the stadium or downtown after a win, and people are proud of it. I think for a long time we didn't really have a lot to be very proud of. We had, you know, great players and success, but like at least like in my lifetime, I was born in 2000. I've seen a lot of really bad baseball.
Yeah.
Like a lot of really bad baseball. And then when the Seidlers took over in 2012 and brought over this like current regime of guys, we almost immediately saw a switch flip. I mean, like, signing big contracts, trading for big name players, sort of having almost the guts to like try to win that it felt
Yeah.
like we didn't have for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think that Peter and what he meant to the ball club, like he made them proud to play for San Diego.
Yep.
And like he did so much in the community outside of the Padres with like the homeless community and giving back to the community, that like it's what makes the Padres feel like San Diego.
Yeah.
Because a like I think I mean, they're the most beloved team in town because they're the only team in town. But like, especially after the Chargers left, they sort of like were like, yeah, this is our town, and like, you see it. They're in the community. Peter was in the community. He felt like one of us. Like he just like felt like a guy who loved baseball and loved that team and loved us
Yeah.
and gave back so much. And I think especially after his passing, um, I think all of us took it really hard.
Yeah.
I never had
Never met
any
the guy. Yeah.
interaction with like never met the guy,
Yeah.
but I was like, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
And like to see sort of like, the PS up there next to like, Randy Jones and like all the other like, placards under the media box, like he's like our guy.
Yeah.
Like we love Peter. And I think everybody who you talk to who's really seen the whole arc from then to
Yeah.
now will sort of give Peter all that credit, and you've been around for more Padres baseball than I have, but
Yeah.
like he made my fandom like amazing,
Yeah.
and it's the reason that like I'm gonna be proud to like every time I go out and I'm like talking baseball, I'm like, yeah, I'm a Padres fan. I love the team, and I think that's huge
Yeah.
because like we didn't have that for a long time.
Yeah. I'll speak to it a little bit. I'm in my 40s, so when the Padres went to the World Series in '98, I was a freshman in high school, right? So when I think owners and the impact and the legacy that they left, John Moore's legacy was Petco Park and the consequent redevelopment surrounding Gaslamp and all those areas that became what it is today, right? So, John Moore, that '98 team, Gwynn, Vaughn, Caminetti, Kevin Brown, Andy Ashby, Trevor Hoffman. That's the team that built Petco Park, right? So that's John Moore's legacy. Peter's legacy to me, he turned the Padres into a religion, right? Like Sunday service at Petco in their military uniforms, right? Peter famously once said, 1 year soon, the baseball guys will smile on the San Diego Padres and we will have a parade. And that is the one quote that has stuck with me all these times, right? He came in and he ushered in the golden ages of Padres baseball. I've talked about it in the past with some of my thread posts. You know, um, eh, as much as we disliked and even hated Eric Hosmer on his way out, um, Peter giving Eric that contract kickstarted everything. Manny Machado doesn't sign here if Eric Hosmer doesn't come here, right? So, you know, um, we were very spoiled for a while, right? We were spending money at the top of the market. A Padres team that historically has never done that, right? The guys that that we grow from the farm that turns into productive major league players, we move them before their contract's over, right? That's the Padres. But here we are, signing Manny Machado. You know, was flirted with Bryce Harper that same offseason. The next offseason was flirting with Trey Turner, almost signed Aaron Judge. Uh, settled, settled for Xander, if you will. But Xander has give him another 25 million. That's a joke that we have, right? So that to me will always be Peter Seidler's legacy. He turned the Padres into a religion, especially in a time where the city was needed something with the Chargers leaving. The Chargers leaving obviously hit a lot of us a lot harder. I don't root for the team anymore. I know some fans still do. To each their own. But I chose not to follow Dean Spaniels to LA, right? But couldn't have come in a more perfect time for a city that was desperate for a winner, right? And while the end result hasn't been, we haven't won a World Series. The farthest we've gone was the NLCS. Like, we're playing competitive baseball. We're winning 90 plus games every season, and we're in it until September, October, making wild cards, NLDS, NLCS. So, that in a nutshell is my gratitude for Peter Seidler. Is he created a cult, if you will, right? Yeah. So,
And I think also like there's nobody who shows up for their baseball team the way that we do.
yeah,
I mean, I think every single home game was a sellout this
Yeah.
year so far, and 72 of the 81 last year were sellouts. And I think, as a city, you feel that and you show up and you feel like, this guy's in it as much as I am. Like I sit at home and I watch every at bat and I watch every game, and I think that Peter felt the same way that I did.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was as invested as any of us crazy people who watch every single baseball game and every single inning of every baseball game and go and watch like the minor leagues and like read up in the off season, and like he just felt like a baseball guy.
Yeah.
And like I think, for all the credit that we can give Peter Seidler, another thing that he said, I think it was in the same speech, was like, there will never be another fire sale in San Diego. Like, while he owned the team, like, there will never be another, like, fire sale. Like, our star players are going to be our star
Yeah.
players. And that's been true.
Yeah.
And, I think, like, we moved Juan Soto, but he wasn't really like our guy. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people felt like he wasn't really our guy while he was here.
Yeah.
And again, he made us what we are like today in this era.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, shout out to Peter Seidler.
yeah, and to John Seiler's credit, despite like the ownership drama between Shield and who's really should be in control of the Padres, he kept Peter's word. He didn't blow up the team.
Yeah.
We did not expand payroll, but we kind of kept it pretty much what it was, right? There wasn't a drastic
Same.
drop off from 200 plus to like under 100, right? Let's talk about the new ownership group. What are your thoughts?
I think like a lot of Padres fans, I am cautiously optimistic
Uh huh.
because I think I look over. I don't know a whole lot about Jose
Yeah.
Feliciano or his wife, Kwanzaa Jones. But what I read, just like the quick piece that the Union Tribune put out after sort of everything, is like they invest in the ball clubs that they are a part of. I think I sent it in the group chat that we have, that like they've put in like $1 billion into Chelsea since they've taken over ownership stake in that team. So that makes me feel pretty good
Yeah.
that like we're gonna have sort of people who want to be competitive, and people who want to invest. And I think they talked about it a little bit. We can get into the joint statement later, but like they're in with the city, and I know that like they're San Diego people. Like Jose Feliciano is like a San Diego guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like owning his hometown team, or at least like a big majority stake in them, like he wants us to be good just as much as we do and just as much as Peter did.
Yeah.
So I'm, until I'm proven wrong, and it's been like a couple weeks since the news broke, and they don't take over until I think June, like
Yeah.
officially with like the league rules and everything. I'm gonna wait until I'm shown that they're not who we think they are.
Yeah.
But also, it's you know,
No, absolutely. And kind of here's my thoughts was it, right? The joint statement, we could dig into it, right? But it's very like PR coded, right? Like it's
yeah,
kind of what you expected new ownership to say, right? But here's my thought. I don't think anybody invests, 3.9 billion to kick rocks and to watch, attendance go down, right? Obviously, they see a profitable opportunity, right? Because I don't think billionaires are in the business of losing money either, right? But
no,
obviously they see, you know, a city that is desperate for a winner, a city that has bought into this franchise, right? The sellout crowds kind of speak for themselves, right? So
they do.
I'm optimistic. I'm kind of in the same boat of like the wait and see piece, but obviously hearing the PR answers, or you're hearing the answers of something like the quote that kind of really stood out is we are all in with the goal of bringing a World Series championship to San Diego, right? That's comforting. And I just kind of lean back on the
It is.
piece. Nobody spends that kind of money to not want to win, right? So
Mhm.
I'm optimistic as far as it goes. Like you, I don't know too much about both of them. Everything that I know is from basically what I read from articles and whatnot. But I'm optimistic. But um,
Yeah.
let's switch gears a little bit. What do we want from this new ownership group? Like what What would make this a
I think at the
successful
top of
venture? Yeah.
I think at the top of everybody's list is, keeping the Padres in San Diego.
Yeah.
I think anybody who invests in this ball club to just move them is, stupid.
Yeah.
There's nobody who shows up like we do. And, to see sort of, if you want to talk about the business side of things, like the valuation go from, 800 million with what the Seidlers brought in to, 3.9 billion over a 14-year period.
Yeah.
That's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
But I want to see us be aggressive in the free agent market. And, looking at what our team needs, like in 2027, there's a lot of pieces that could really help us out,
Yeah.
in the free agent market. And I want them to give AJ the ability to go and get the guys that he wants to get. I think, part of what makes me really love AJ is that he does some of his best work when he is in a crunch and he is in a bind. I think, looking at the big ups that we've been talking about, like Gavin Sheets, Ty France, Miguel and Duhar, these aren't like top flight free agent guys. Griffin Canning, minor league deal. But he's the best talent scout in baseball. And if you give the best talent scout in baseball a blank check to go and bring a winner to San Diego, it's probably going to be a really good team. And so I think, remaining competitive, spending money, and investing in the team the way we do. Because, like, that's basically all any fan wants at the end of the day, is to just feel like they're bought in the same way that we're bought in.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, my very short list of like what I want from the team. Now, could I fix the downtown parking situation if I wanted to? Like, sure, like go ahead, do that. Like, make it free for all I care, but like just put a winner out.
Yeah.
Just keep us competitive.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Yeah. I'm along the same lines. My expectations and what I want to see from them, um, Padres fans, we're not Boston fans. We're not Cubs fans. We're not going to show up if the team consistently lose 90 to 100 game a year, right? And that's just the honest truth of it, right? You could call it fair weather, you could call it whatever you want, or you could call it there's just better things to do in the summer in San Diego than to watch a 110 loss team, right? So right off the bat, my I don't want to say expectations, but what I want from this new ownership group is a commitment to continue on what Peter started, right? Which is competitive baseball. And I think speaking for myself, and I know probably a good majority of Padres fans feel this way, like we don't have a championship or bust mentality here in San Diego. Just put out a good product, compete, and if we win, excellent. But if we don't, you know, same old Padres, right? Like, but at least it's not 100 loss, 110 loss, empty ballpark, half empty ballpark. And I think when they mic'd up Manny on the Apple TV broadcast on Friday, he spoke a little bit to it. When he first signed here, it was 25,000. And 25,000 was a little generous. I don't think 25,000 really even showed up when he first signed here,
that's
right?
more than a little.
Yeah,
generous.
yeah. I remember in 2016, 2017, Sunday against the Rockies, I got some tickets from StubHub for like $20 a ticket for 4 tickets, like 2 rows up from the first base dugout, right? Like you can't even park for $20 these days, right? So
No, you can't.
yeah, my expectation is very like simple. Like you don't need to be the Dodgers. You don't need to outspend the Dodgers just because it's crazy amount of money, right? The Dodgers have all kinds of endorsement deal floating in. They have a gold mine that's named Shohei Ohtani. That's kind of like raking in the money for them, right? So I don't expect them to compete with the Dodgers necessarily, but I would like for us to start shopping at the top of the market again. I would like us to be in the discussions at the very least when Tarek Skubal becomes a free agent. I would like us to be in the discussion when Pittsburgh comes out and inevitably says we cannot afford to keep Paul Skeens because we draw 5,000 fans a game, right?
Right.
I would like us to be in that discussion. But for me as a Padres fan, as a longtime suffering Padres fan of 3+ decades, I don't need us to put out an all-star team. I just need us to put out a good enough team that we're going to be there at the end of the year. Win, lose, or draw, for better or for worse, I'm going to be a Padres fan. But, like, give me something to root for, right? So, not super high expectation, but, I mean, for me, just continue the work that Peter started, right? So, pretty simple. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's skip ahead a little bit. Let's talk about the upcoming series. We got three in Seattle, and then we come home
Mhm.
against the Dodgers for the first series of 2026. As of this recording, the Mariners are currently 21 and 20, 21 and 22, one game on the 500. They are a game back of the homeless Athletics. Sorry, I don't want to say homeless. They put Sacramento on the chest this year,
Yeah.
so I know Sacramento
Yeah.
fans are kind of loving it. So the Sacramento Athletics, um, and then the Dodgers, as of this recording, actually snapped their four-game losing streak against the Giants tonight with Shohei Ohtani on the mound, and they're half a game behind us right now. So let's talk about Seattle. We swept them, earlier this season.
Mhm.
Um, talk to me about the Mariners, Bob.
I'm feeling pretty good going to Seattle. Like you said, we swept them earlier in the year, and we all those games we always play them well. It's just about what version of the Padres team shows up, and I think this team, for better or for worse, will sort of play to the level of their opponent. And Seattle is a good baseball team. And if you look, and if you go by what Bill Parcells said, like you are your record, and we're a 600 baseball team.
Yeah,
So I think we have a pretty good shot to take that series in Seattle because a lot of these guys we play really well. Brian Wu, we beat last time he came out. Um, Luis Costello, we hit him around. And I think, this offense is sort of, it's slumping, and I think it's finally going to wake up. I think this road trip is sort of serving as what the one that we went on with Boston and Pittsburgh sort of served earlier in the year. Like a team cohesion is happening on the road, I
yeah,
feel like. And this is me, I don't know anything, I'm just putting that out there because that's what happened last time. And I think that like they're really going to show up for these games, and we have good pitchers going against good pitchers, and usually in terms of like a pitching duel situation, we come out the other side because we have the best bullpen in baseball.
yeah.
So like I'm going to Seattle. I got my bags packed, and I'm expecting to come back with at least 2 wins. Um, you know, I'm. I think anybody who will look at these two teams sees they're sort of both underperforming offensively and is sort of waiting for when that wake up happens. Looking over at Seattle, I don't really see anything that's jumping off the paper at me as like a red flag offensively. I mean, Cal Raleigh did break his 0 for 38 streak with 2 hits the other night, and he looks to be sort of at least putting bat to ball, getting it in play, and doing that at a higher clip. But I think we are in a pretty good spot to win that series just because I look at the paper and I like our pitchers more than I like their pitchers, even if they weren't wearing our jerseys. Like I think pretty much everybody over there isn't bred the same way our guys are.
Yeah,
They're great pitchers. They go deep into games, but we have guys who can take over games and dominate.
yeah,
And I'm hoping to see some of that. And I'm hoping to see Cannon come out and really, shake off those that little league grand slam that happened to him and sort of be like, that was one play in one game. Other than that, I had a great outing. I had a great
yeah.
outing before that, and just shove like we expect.
Yeah, quick correction on that. Canning's actually pitching tomorrow in Milwaukee. Lining up
Oh,
for us this weekend, we have Randy Vasquez going against Hancock on Friday, Walker Bueller going against Gilbert on Saturday, and there is actually no pitcher announced on Sunday for us against Kirby.
it's Giolito.
I'm guessing Lucas Giolito, right? I can't imagine Matt Waldron probably getting
Mhm.
another start. Quick little tidbit note for those of you that are following the Padres every single game this season on TV. Saturday's game will be on Fox, and then Sunday's game will be on Peacock. So little coverage note there. But yeah, I feel really good about the series. Obviously, we stole game two in that sweep against the Mariners, right?
Yeah.
No reason we should have won. But obviously, they're kind of dealing with the struggles of their own, right? Cal hasn't really been Cal. Julio, slowly coming together, having a pretty solid season with a 770 OPS at the moment. But I like our chances too. I just think we lined up very well against them, and can never count the Padres out. That's just what it is. But pro tip to the
It's just what it
Mariners:
is.
ninth inning, if it's tied or you guys are up ahead, I would walk Barry Bonds. I would go ahead and not pitch to him.
Walk
Um,
him.
Yeah, let's skip ahead to the Dodgers. You know, the highly anticipated Dodgers series. So, lining up for us in that series, we got King on Monday, we got Canning on Tuesday, and then we got Strandy Vasquez on Wednesday going up against Yamamoto, Otani, and Sheehan. So, talk to me a little bit about the Dodgers.
I think this is when we first get the schedule, at least for me, I always check when we face off against the Dodgers first. It is
They're the standard.
measuring stick
Yeah,
based.
they're the standard. Absolutely.
They're the
Yeah,
standard.
yeah,
And, I think it comes at a very, advantageous time for us because, they've looked vulnerable. And this is a team that a lot of people, especially after they signed Kyle Tucker, they were like, their roster is worth the GDP of a small country and they're going to just bulldoze
they're gonna win
everybody.
130 games, right?
And
Yeah.
they haven't looked like that at all recently. They did win today,
Hmm.
but also I think we're a better team than the Giants. And these games, these are guys who they feed off each other. Like Fernando Tatis, if he doesn't show up in Seattle, he's gonna show up in this series. Like he always seems to show up in the Dodger series, in one way or another, whether it's a big, base running play, a big defensive play, if his bat wakes up offensively. And, for all the talk about how good the Dodgers are, I think, we're right there with them. And it's not like, oh, like the little old Padres, like we're still worth like I think it's 200 plus $1 million this year. But this is sort of, you know, I think everybody in the front office, everybody in the fan base, everybody on the team is like, how is this first series going to go? Is going
Yeah.
to tell us a lot about what this team looks like
Yeah.
and how we operate at the trade deadline. Like, if we do really well, we're going to go out and buy.
Yeah.
And I think if we don't do as well, we might sort of sit back a little bit at the trade deadline and not be as aggressive. But
Yeah.
this is the same team pretty much that only lost the division by 2 games
Yeah.
last year and is tied
Yeah.
for in the lead right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, the Dodgers are the measuring stick, right? They are who we want to catch.
Mhm.
Even as a Padres fan, I find myself defending all of these like wild Dodgers are ruining baseball takes. The Dodgers are not ruining baseball. You want your owners in your ownership group to do exactly what they're doing. This is the blueprint, right? For big markets, anyways, right? Not every market can obviously sustain this kind of like success and money, if you will. So, the Dodgers are 5-5 in their last 10, 5-7 in the month of May. So you're right. It is a good time for us to kind of face off against them, right? We're both kind of like limping into this matchup a little
Mhm.
bit, having played some pretty uninspiring baseball, if you will. But again, it's the Dodgers. Um, you know, um, it- for as much has been made about Shohei Otani's struggles at the plate, it's got to say something when you got a guy who's struggling, who goes out every 6 days and takes the baseball and puts up a sub 1 ERA. Like, what a luxury,
Mhm.
right? As much as the talks of just Mookie's been hurt, Freddie hasn't been super great, compared to Freddie standards. But then, even amidst of missing Mookie and Freddie and Shohei not really being themselves, you got Andy Pajes, who has 9 home runs and a 900 OPS, right?
Yep.
You got Max Muncy, who's got 11 home runs. Like, this team is deep. So it's
Sure.
going to be interesting baseball. I'm not willing to make a prediction because I think Padres Dodgers could go either way. Um, uh,
Really can.
yeah, it's going to be a good series though. Like, just the pitches that are lining up to go the series. We got two of our best starters going this series, right? With King and Vasquez. They got two of their best starters with Yamamoto and Otani. It's gonna be good baseball. Um, yeah,
If this doesn't get you going, you're just not a baseball fan. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but like best on best in, mid-May, like I'm jacked up like it's October. Like I won't be able to really like contain my excitement the entire day before
yeah,
just because like I look forward as a fan to seeing these good matchups. Like
yeah,
I want to see, my team play the best team and see how they measure up. And also, touching on what you said about this being, good for baseball. Like, I think, the Dodgers flushing in money the way they are is forcing a lot of other teams to,
Yeah.
and a lot of other fan bases to sort of put pressure on owners to do that. And so I think, like you said, it's the blueprint. Like, we need our owners to sort of like not match, but like get the memo of like, this is an arms race. We need to sack up.
Yeah.
Like, we can't just keep dumpster diving
Yeah.
at January and February, 2 weeks before spring training, and expect to, stack up to a team that spends annually close to $400 million on a payroll.
Yeah. No, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so it should be a good series. I have to say, dude, like all the, as a Padres fan, I don't hold any like crazy hate against the Dodgers. I do want to remind people that, it's baseball. So if you're gonna be at the ballpark this week, on the Dodger series, remember there's kids there. Please just it's just baseball, right? But yeah,
Just baseball.
it's going to be a very good early season test, I think, for us, um, for both teams, if you will, right? And as much as
Yeah.
some Dodgers fans claim it's not a rivalry, like it's pretty obvious that this is a full blown rivalry at this
Yeah.
point. It's just for us, we're the little brother who just can't get past Big Brother, which and I'm not ashamed to say that as a Padres fan, right? It's a reality,
No.
that we are chasing what they have, and hopefully we'll get there. But yeah, I mean, let's wrap up this episode with some closing notes. Give me your thoughts for the next couple of weeks here as we head into this stretch here.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm still feeling pretty good about how
Mhm.
everything's going with us. I think part of, being a baseball fan is every year your team goes on a really hot run, and then they sort of kind of either sputter or they lose games they should win, and you have to sort of have this conversation with yourself like, this is a very long season,
Yeah,
and it's a game of averages, and it'll work out. And I think, a lot of people are reading too much into the offensive struggles, and that's just baseball. We're in a slump. We're in a pretty okay time to have a slump, but we need the bats to wake up soon.
yeah,
So I'm hoping that like these big games that as fans we're excited about, the team gets excited about, and we see that reflected in the way that they play. And I think, for the next like 2 weeks of baseball, that I see ahead of us, like, I'm excited to see what Giolito has. I think Yuki Matsui coming back from the IL has looked even better than I anticipated. I mean, he's thrown 4 2/3 scoreless innings in 2 appearances. He's looked really good,
yeah,
which has been a breath of fresh air for a very overtaxed bullpen. And, I'm just excited to watch my team. And I hope that the next time we talk, we get to talk about how we beat the Dodgers, and, how we are still a team that is very hot, and, coming up on the deadline, we're looking to buy.
yeah. No, absolutely. I'm optimistic. I think a couple of you probably saw my post on it. We're not playing the best baseball right now. That's truth. That's reality. Plus
Mhm.
3 run differential at 25 and 17. Is that going to be sustainable? Probably not, right? And kind of like what we talked about earlier, I would like to, stress less during these games. Let's go out there and put out,
Mhm.
10 runs early so that way we could coast to win one of these days, right? But for now, we get what we get, which is the cardiac Padres. Don't tune out
Yeah.
because Gavin Sheets is going to hit a 3-run home run, right? Like, I think somebody commented on one of my posts earlier on Threads. I went to get dinner, I came back, and we won.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm optimistic in general. I'm always optimistic. I do have like my shade of doom. I think you're not fanning correctly if you don't doom a little bit, right? If you don't, especially as a
Yeah.
Padre fan, we're conditioned to with the whole here we go again. Here's the same BS
Mhm.
as always, right? That's just the reality of
Yeah.
what we're conditioned at. But it's important to remember that we're still in the golden age of Padres baseball. Um, there's going to be some
Mhm.
uncomfortable conversations surrounding Manny Machado eventually. I don't think it's going to happen this year. Um, there's probably going to be some uncomfortable conversations surrounding Fernando Tatis eventually, right? I don't think it's anywhere near anytime
Mhm.
soon. But
Yeah.
um, I have all the faith in the world in AJ Preller. He's I think we touched on the first episode. I talked about this. If we have three needs that have to be addressed at the deadline, AJ is going to go out and address all three, if not two out of the three, right? So I don't think the moves are done. I think if we look at the history of AJ Preller at trade deadlines, he's very aggressive, right? Like, O'Hearn last year, Laureano last year. The a couple years before, like Adam Frazier at the deadline just keeps adding pieces, right? So I think buckle up. I think we're going to be in the long runs. I think somebody mentioned that they think this team's going to be an 85 win team. I disagree. I politely disagree, respectfully disagree, because I think this team has the pieces to go there, right? Now if Manny and Nando and Merrill puts up a sub 700 OPS, we're probably in trouble for the full season, right? If they do that for the full season, we're most likely in trouble. There's nothing that's going to save us, right? But I don't want to dive too much onto potential targets, because I think it's too early to talk about trade targets, just because we don't really know what team's going to go where. All the early indications, it seems like the Giants are probably going to blow it up. They're currently 18 and 25. The Angels could blow it up with whatever they have left. They're 16 and 28. The Astros are 17 and 27. The Red Sox fired their entire coaching staff and they're 18 and 24. So there's a couple teams that are going to be sellers, but who knows? Baseball, they could go on a month of a hot streak and all of a sudden be back in contention to become buyers, right? So I think it's a little too early, too premature to talk about my wish list and whatnot, even though we touched on it a little bit last time. But yeah. I'm optimistic. I think we got a good stretch of baseball that's coming up. The Dodgers will obviously be the biggest piece, that's the biggest test that's awaiting us, just because once again they're the standard and we've been trying to chase them, and I have no shame in saying that. They're back-to-back World Series champions for a reason, right? But other than that, for the rest of the month, without diving too deep into it, we got a lot of winnable baseball. Against the Sacramento A's, the Phillies, the Nationals. So we'll see, but I'm optimistic. I definitely think with Giolito coming back possibly Sunday, but obviously wishing Pivetta health. I'm not sure that we'll see Pivetta this year,
Nothing but the best.
yeah, but if Pivetta comes back, watch out. So yeah, so that'll about do it for us. Bob, you have any closing notes for our friends here?
I'm excited to watch my baseball team, and you should be too. I mean, this team is so much fun. I mean, I wish we had games that were easier to watch, because it's 8 to 7 innings of agony, and then two of the greatest innings ever almost every single day. But we're in a really good spot. Follow us over on Threads, and that is sort of still our home base of where we do everything out of. We live thread and post clips every single game, and keep the faith. Let's go San Diego. And that's pretty much all from me. Bill, what about you?
Yeah, I want to first of all just thank everybody who took the time out to watch the first episode. Honestly, even if you watch 5 minutes, that's good enough for me. Bob and I talked a lot about this. There are a lot of talented people that cover the Padres that gets paid to cover the Padres, right? So, anybody that's ever that even took the time 5 minutes, hell, even 60 seconds to watch a clip of some of the podcasts that we posted, with sincere gratitude. Thank you so much. Just because there's it's funny because I was talking to somebody at work today. We only have 24 hours in a day. We sleep probably 6 hours of those days, if you're lucky 8 hours. If you have kids, if you have a newborn, probably 2 hours. There's our time is limited, and we're working 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So anybody that took the time to even give us a little bit of a listen, thank you. Just because there's like I said, time's valuable.
So much gratitude.
Yeah, so much gratitude. But it's been fun. I think the whole vision of it is just two guys sitting down talking about the Padres, and hopefully we can help you kind of gain new perspective sometimes, if you will, and help you kind of curate through the season, if you will. But yeah, thank you. I think the the support has been super amazing. And we even had one of our friends ask us, like, is it possible to get it on Apple Music and Spotify? So that's coming up soon. But yeah,
Stay tuned.
no general expectations, but I'm just grateful for the community that we've built. The group chat has been amazing. Just kind of, living and dying with every pitch in that group chat has been kind of fun. So, but yeah, appreciate your support. If you got to watch the whole episode this time again, thank you. But we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, guys.
In 2 weeks, go Padres, go.
Driving through the night, we going right towards the sunrise. 30-hour road trip back when we had too much time. Nothing